Hey everyone, Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining us on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we're going to be working on this 1999 Carrera 911, also known as a 996, and we're going to be covering how to replace the rear brakes on this car. A couple of reasons why you may want to do this. First of all, brake pads are a wear item. They don't last forever. Typically, you're going to want to replace these about every 30 to 50,000 miles, depending on how you drive. Especially if you do track days or spirited drives, they're going to wear faster than normal. Now, a couple things to look for is your rotors. As these get older, they can either warp or develop a lip around the edge of the ring. That's something you can check easily by either A, stepping on the brake pedal at a higher speed. If you get a pulsation, you know you have a warped rotor. If you reach in and touch it with the end of your fingernail and your finger catches the lip of the rotor, then you know that you have a lip, meaning that they're pretty worn. Same thing goes for the pads. These don't last forever. They do wear down, and eventually you're going to have metal on metal contact if you don't replace them. What's great about these cars is that they do have dual wear sensors, one on each corner of the vehicle. And once these are triggered, that means that you're basically nearing the end of the pad life. So that's another good telltale sign of why you want to replace them. Today we're going to be using the Zimmerman and Techstar kit that we list on the website. We'll leave a link for you guys below. You're going to get 2 Zimmerman rotors. These are zinc coated. You're going to get a set of Techstar pads. You're going to get some brake pad shims. We'll show you how these go on. They are a little bit interesting. They're not typical like something you'd find on a normal vehicle. But you want to replace these caliper carrier bolts every time you do a brake job when it involves removing the caliper. And same thing with the rotor set screws. They're so inexpensive and easily stripped that you want to replace them every time you remove the rotor. Now, before we get started on the car, let's take a look at the tools that we're going to need for this job. We're going to start off with a torque wrench. We have a 1/2-inch torque wrench here and a 1/2-inch breaker bar. These are going to be used to tighten and loosen the carrier bolts on the caliper. We have a flashlight so we can see, a punch, a 19mm socket to get our wheel lug bolts off. We have a 3/8 wrench as well as 2 sockets. This is a T55 for the new caliper carrier bolt and a 10mm hex for the old caliper carrier bolt. We have a caliper hook, a wire brush to clean off our hubs, a pick to remove small clips and pins and any miscellaneous, a couple screwdrivers, specifically a Phillips head and a flat head, a dead blow hammer, and in this case optional, an impact gun. This is used to take off the wheels. Now that we have the tools covered, let's get onto the vehicle and get started. My good people, thank you for joining us at the vehicle. We're going to go ahead and get started by removing the wheel on our car. But first things first, we're doing this job on the lift. You guys can do this on your garage floor, in your driveway. You don't really need a lift. We're just doing this for ease of filming. So we're going to take our 19mm socket. And this car does have a wheel lock on each corner. We're going to take that one off first, but you can skip the step if you don't have a wheel lock. Now that we got our wheel off, we're going to start by removing the brake pad wear sensor. It's engaged on the pads in 2 spots over here. We're replacing these, so we're just going to yank them out. Wow, these are actually tight on here. Who would have guessed? There's one. The pad is also run through this pad retaining clip. Just unhook it off the bottom. There's 2. Undo it from here. It's another holder in place behind the knuckle. And then you're going to want to go ahead and lift this metal tab right here, and then pull out your sensor. Now that we've got our wear sensor off, we're going to go ahead and remove this pin that holds the pads in place. You want to start off by removing this little cotter pin at the end, or clip, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm just using a pick tool to get it out. Our brake kit comes with new ones, so you can toss it. If you're not replacing it, hang on to it. Now we got our clip out. We're going to go ahead and push this pin all the way through. I'm just using a simple punch and a hammer. Just be careful as the pin is clearing the pad retaining clip here. This may just shoot out at you, so if you can, put a hand on it as it comes out. Otherwise, just be mindful that it might shoot out. In this case, I was able to catch it with my punch, and off it comes. Finish removing the pin all the way through. And there we go. Now that we have our retaining pin and clip out, we're going to go ahead and get these pads out. Now, before we pull them out, we're going to use this flathead screwdriver to pry them off a little bit and compress the pistons. If you're going to be doing this on your car without replacing the rotors, you want to be very careful not to damage the rotors. In this case, we are replacing everything, so we're not too worried about it. It helps to put the screwdriver, if you're using a screwdriver or a flathead, through the hole where the retaining pin goes, and just kind of use that in your advantage. Use it to pull back a little bit. That'll give you enough space in between the rotor and the pad, and then you can shove your flathead through. Now, if you're doing this trackside, obviously you don't want to jam the screwdriver in between the pad and rotor. You're going to damage both. Use a hole like we just showed you here, and then you can go ahead and use something similar to this Lyle tool, where you can get it inside of here, and you can use this to compress your pistons in if you're not removing the caliper. All right, now that we have enough play, just go ahead and slide these old pads out. Here's one. And here's two. Now we've got our rear pads out, we're going to go ahead and get the caliper off so we can get this rotor off. In order to do that, you're going to have two 10mm hex bolts. We're going to use a big 1/2-inch ratchet to get that guy off. Just to get it started, break the top one loose, and the bottom one. Now that they're both broken loose, I'm just going to switch to a 3/8 drive ratchet to speed things up a little bit. Now that we got the caliper bolt out, I just want to show you guys. This is our old one. It's a 10mm hex head. This is our new one. It uses a torque spit. We'll show you what size that is when we install it. The reason they look different is Porsche has superseded this bolt. So there's a new part number. We'll leave that in the link below. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at what these look like before we went any further. Now we have our caliper off. You can see where these brake pad shims go. We have two on this side and two on the other side. We're just going to go ahead and pop these old ones off. And one thing you were going to want to note is the pistons, the bores are actually different sizes. So you'll see in the new kit you have two different size shims. So they're pretty easy to put in, but they're pretty hard to mistake which one goes where. So get rid of those. You saw one fell out earlier when we took out the pads. Last one left. I'm going to get this caliper cleaned up and hang it up. I'm just going to use some brake clean to clean off the caliper a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and remove our rotor. You're going to have two set screws. It takes a Phillips head screwdriver. If you guys have seen my other videos, you know that I like to shock these a little bit before removing them, just to free up any potential rust or corrosion that are keeping them in place. Just taking a Phillips head and a hammer. Give it a couple taps. If they're held on a little bit, you might just want to give them a little bit of a tug. More than likely, it's the parking brake shoes that are holding it on. Bam. Yeah, baby. Now, before we go ahead and install our new rotor, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit using a little wire wheel. You can use a wire wheel on a Dremel or a drill or some emery cloth or sandpaper. We happen to have this today, so this will do. The handbrake shoes on this car were replaced not too long ago before we bought them. So as you can see, they have plenty of life left. We're not going to go ahead and touch them. But this would be the perfect time to do them if you were in need of doing them. This is optional. I like to put a little bit of paste on the hub so that the new rotor doesn't seize to it, considering that we live in New England. This car is a California car, so it's never seen a winter. So you can see it's not really rusty, but it can't hurt. Just free insurance, cheap insurance. Now that our hub is ready to go, we're going to go ahead and get ready to install our new rotors. As you can see, I changed my gloves. The reason for that is that the old ones were very filthy. These new rotors from Zimmerman come zinc coated. You want to try to avoid getting any dirt or grease on them, simply because you cannot blast them with brake cleaner like you would a traditional bare rotor. So some fresh gloves, our rotors are ready to go on. I'm going to start with one set screw We got our holes lined up. Just leave it on there, just gently snug. Once we get our second one started, then we can go ahead and tighten them down. If you were to torque these, it's about no more than 7 foot-pounds. It's really not a lot. We're just gonna go ahead and snug these up by hand with the screwdriver so that there's a chance in taking them off on the next brake job. Now we're ready to go ahead and get our brake pad shims put in place. As you can see, they are 2 different sizes. As I showed you before, the caliper piston bores are also 2 different sizes. They have a little bit of 3M on the other side of them. You're going to want to go ahead and peel this off before putting them on the caliper. Now that I got one of them ready, you can see in this case, the piston most forward on the passenger rear is the bigger one. I'm going to go ahead and put my shim in here. It should just clip right into place. Repeat the same for the other 3 pistons. Now we're ready to put our caliper back into place. For the install on these new caliper carrier bolts, you're going to need a T55 Torx. Now that we have our bolts snugged in all the way, you're going to want to go ahead and torque them down to 63 foot-pounds. There we go. Now that our caliper is back on and the bolts are torqued down, we're going to go ahead and install our pads. These are going to be identical either way, so you can't really mess up which direction they go in, other than you want to make sure the material is facing the rotor side. Your new shims have a sticky backside, so they may give you a little bit of trouble, but you just got to get them in there. Now we're going to go ahead and put our retaining clip and pin in. Now on this pin, you'll see there is a hole for the cotter pin that you have to use to lock it into place. So when you send it through, you want to make sure it's facing the direction that you can get to it once it is back in the caliper. In addition, your wear sensor is going to be routed on this bottom portion of this clip. So you don't want to install it backwards. You want to make sure it's orientated the same way you took it out. I'm just going to use a hammer to get the pin started. Now that we've done that, you're going to want to go ahead and install the cotter pin that holds the pin itself into place. Now all we have left to do is install our wear sensor. You'll note that they're notched. The pads also have a notch in them so that you can align them properly as you install them. I'll give you a good shot once I line up the hole just like that. You see the notch on the pad and the notch on the sensor. Send her home. You're going to want to route your sensor underneath this retaining clip right there. And same thing on this side. If this was facing the correct way, it'd be nice. Oh, come on. Come on, baby. Bam. There's also a notch in the caliper for the wire itself. And then we're going to go ahead and route it through and connect it on the other end. I'm going to route our wire through. Again, there is a clip here that holds the cable in place. Then you're going to want to make sure this metal tab is still up. Plug it in, plug it in. The metal clip down to latch it into place, and you're done. And there you have it. That concludes the brake job. We're going to go ahead and put our wheel back on, our 19mm lugs back on, and torque the wheel down to 96 foot-pounds. Well, there you have it. That concludes the rear brake job on this 996 behind us. As you can see, pretty basic tools is all you need, something that you can do on the lift or on the ground. If you guys liked what you saw today, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment box below. And if you want to see more DIYs like this one, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.